Hey everybody, my name's Ed. I'm just kind of looking at myself in this lighting. I almost look like an old Neil Adams drawing from the 70s. That crazy double lighting effect he used to do. Yeah, maybe, maybe not. Anyway, this is going to be kind of a long video. I'm gonna have to like chop it up. Basically, I'm gonna try to do some reviews of comics I've bought over the last like 3 or 4 weeks. I'm gonna edit this down to at least 2 videos. So let's just go ahead and jump into it. Thank you very much for watching. If you make it to the end, I appreciate it. And let's just get started. Cheers. Okay, so we have Coyotes #1 by story Sean Lewis, and the art is Caitlin Yarsky. I'm not 100% sure what's going on with this comic. I just kind of took a chance on it. Basically, it seems to be about this girl whose family has died or something, but then she kind of becomes this, it seems like, supernatural warrior or something. It's a lot of I guess that's what I want to say. It has a lot of supernatural overtones to it, where she has the dreams of coyotes, and then she somehow gets in touch with, I don't know, people from the spirit world or ancestors or something, and they teach her how to fight. And I guess there's been all these kind of murders and everything happening in a little small town where they live, and she's been detained, but she gets out. There's a cop here who's kind of involved, so he wants to get to the bottom of everything. So I'm not too sure exactly what the direction of the comic is going to be. It seems like it's kind of a murder mystery with supernatural overtones to it. A heavy sort of a lot of, I guess, I don't know what word I want to use. Mexican lore and mythology seems to be kind of blended in with the plot. So yeah, I'll give it a few issues. It's, at the very least, it is interesting. So we'll see how it goes. Black Lightning #1, written by Tony Isabella, who is Black Lightning's creator, and the art is by Claytor Henry. Basically, the premise is Black Lightning has come back to town. He's fighting with all these sort of gang members and whatnot. But he also has to deal with the police. Black Lightning shows up, but the police don't necessarily trust him. So there's a lot of tension there. He does have a friend or two on the force, but it's a whole sort of tightrope walk that he's trying to do. At the same time, his crime boss, this is Tobias Whale, is making his moves in the city. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. Tobias Whale is kind of like their kingpin guy. And in the old comic back in the 70s, he was this albino guy, but here they made him clearly African American. And it's also interesting that we've got the Black Lightning TV show, where Jefferson Pierce has two teenage daughters, but there's no mention of him having kids in this particular issue. I think I read in an interview that, or was it an interview? I think I read somewhere where Tony Isabella wasn't a big fan of Black Lightning having kids, so he wasn't going to mention it in this story. I actually like the idea of him having like adult daughters, but we'll see. We'll see how the story goes. But like I said, I pretty much liked it. I thought it was. I thought the plot was solid. I thought the dialogue was good. I really liked the art. So yeah, I'm on board. Deathstroke number 25, anniversary issue. Written by Christopher Priest, and the art is by. The pencils are Carlo Pagulatin, and the inks are Norm. Oh man, I can't even read this. Ratman, Trevor Scott, and Jason Paz. Basically, the story is Deathstroke has been kidnapped by the secret society of supervillains, and they put him on trial to determine whether or not he's still evil. Basically, over the last several issues, Deathstroke has had some sort of epiphany where he kind of wants to change his life a little bit. He is he's assembled a team of teenage heroes, and he's kind of moved into this sort of more ambiguous moral space, and people don't know if he's becoming a good guy or he's becoming a bad guy or he's still an anti-hero or what. So this issue kind of deals with that. We get a retelling of the origin of Deathstroke, and yeah, that's basically it in a nutshell. I kind of enjoyed it. I've been enjoying this comic book for a while. I do think it's one of DC Comics' better, superhero comics. It ends on a pretty interesting twist, and it just continues to be a really good read, in my opinion. Okay, Iron Man 593. This is the spectacular lenticular cover. See if you can see it here. It's like, is it changing? Here's Tony. Here's Riri, right? Tony. Riri. Okay, right? Can you see it? I'm hoping the camera's picking this up. Here we go. Ah. 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 I'm not so sure the camera will pick up the back here. This kind of shiny, jazzy cover here. This is, I'm pretty sure this was drawn, or this was painted by Alex Ross. But if you're looking at it in person, you just kind of see how the images are kind of raised and a little bit apart from each other. And one fun thing here is basically these guys here, these statues of the founding of members of the Avengers, is kind of a shout out to the cover of the first issue of the Heroes Return issue of the Avengers, which I guess is technically volume 3 from the late 90s that George Perez did, but they've stuck in a new character right here. All I know, or all anybody knows about this character, is she's called Voyager, and it's like, the big mystery is who is this character or whatever. One other thing I like about all the kind of like legacy homages is that here they do give you kind of a list, and they tell you which cover each of the more modern covers is doing a parody or a homage to. The only bad thing about it is they don't list the year that the actual comic came out. They list the year that the series started. So, for instance, Defenders 6 is an homage to an Avengers number 16, but it says based on Avengers 1963. That comic didn't come out in 63. I'm pretty sure that comic came out in either 64 or 65. 63 is when they started publishing it. You know, same things for this Iron Man. Let's see if they find it here. Let me see here. Here, the Iron Man comic that we have right here is an homage to Iron Man number 150. It says 1968, but 1968 is when Iron Man number 1 was published. Iron Man 150 came out like in the early 80s. I actually remember buying that comic book off the rack when I was a kid or whatever. So anyway, getting to what's going on with the comic. Oh, I don't know. Well, I don't know if we want to make a big deal out of it. Brian Michael Bendis just announced that he's going to be leaving Marvel for DC. A lot of interesting buzz on the internet about it, because some people are like, "Oh, he's been so synonymous with Marvel for the last 15 to 20 years now, at least since I say 99, 2000 ish or whatever." So a lot of people are like, "Oh, you know what I mean?" But he's been there for like 20 years or so almost. So it's I can see how his contract is up, and maybe he just wants to try to do different things. And I'm not mad at him. I get bummed about some comics he writes. Some I think are really good. Some I think he's not suited for, and other comics are just somewhere in the middle or whatever. And I'm sure that's probably going to be what happens when he gets to DC. He'll do one or two comics that are really great, something that's terrible, and then other things are just kind of in the middle. This particular issue is the first chapter of the Return of Tony Stark. And that's basically it. It's the opening chapter. There's some interesting things going on where you've got Tony's supporting cast, or I should say the art is Stefano Casello and Alex Maleev, and they're having some sort of like expo or whatever. Oh, all the great things that Tony Stark has done, la-di-da-di-da, and some mysterious guy says something to Mary Jane, telling her that she and Tony Stark's mom are going to be removed from the company by the board. Then we have this little insert here. This art's by Alex Maleev, where Dr. Doom, who is also taking on the mantle of Iron Man, and interestingly enough, as far as like the fans are concerned, nobody's upset about that. Everybody's upset about Riri Williams. Nobody's upset about Victor Von Doom. Just saying. Anyway, we have this thing where the Thing, Ben Grimm, kind of confronts him, saying, "Hey, you're trying to do this hero thing. I know you're full of bull and whatnot." And And basically, I don't think I'm giving too much away. The rest of the issue has to deal with everybody kind of discovering that Tony's body is missing. For the most part, I enjoyed it. I don't think it was a bad comic. I think this is actually one of Brian Michael Bendis' better written comics. It seems like he's putting a lot more effort into this than certain things I could name. And yeah, I liked it. For the most part, it suffers from Bendis isms. The whole decompression. A lot of snarky dialogue for the sake of having snarky dialogue that sometimes works and sometimes doesn't work. But yeah, I thought pretty solid issue. Really looking forward to seeing how they kind of resolve the whole thing. So yeah. Oh, one other thing is I'm not gonna make a big deal about it, but a lot of people are like, oh, what's gonna happen to the Riri Williams character now that this is gone? And if I'm guessing, they'll probably they might give her a little spin-off comic, maybe a mini series. More likely, she'll probably end up being a member of either the Champions or the Young Avengers, something like that, or whatever. But that led me to think of something I said to somebody else online several months ago, where that person was like, Riri Williams almost seems like a support character in her own comic. And I was like, it's because she is a support character. It never stopped being Tony Stark's comic. The comic book never stopped being called Invincible Iron Man, even though Riri Williams is Iron Heart. The comic still has Tony Stark support characters, and despite the fact that Tony Stark is in a coma, he's still been present in almost, in every other issue as an AI, training his young protege. So it's always been an Iron Man comic. It's in my mind, it's no different than when you pick up some Batman comic and he's training a new sidekick or whatever, a new Batgirl or a new Robin or whatever. Okay, so here's Tony Stark training, Iron Heart, Iron Girl. You know what? I don't know if I said this on tape before. They should have called this character Iron Maiden. That would have been the coolest thing ever. I know why they can't do that. There's obviously Iron Maiden, the heavy metal band, and then there's Iron Maiden, the comic book character created by Wally Wood. Yeah, by Wally Wood. Thunder Agents or whatever. So, but anyway, I'm drifting off now. But yeah, this has never stopped being Tony Stark's comic. So, okay. Anyway, on to another comic book. Renato Jones Freelancer #4, written and drawn by Kyle Andrews. Get like a fold-out cover, or wraparound cover, I should say. Basically, the premise of this comic is the hero is this sort of vigilante guy who goes after, I guess, corporate wrongdoers or something. It's meant to be a satire, but the whole thing is so over the top and so crazy and so actually not focused that I think it loses a little bit in whatever point it's trying to make. Just because the president is this sort of just crazed, barbaric, capitalist robber baron. And not only does he not care about the poor, he's stealing money from his rich friends at gunpoint. And while this is going on, missiles from the Soviet Union are flying. And look, his henchmen, they're all wearing armbands, but the armbands have the $sign on them. And just all kinds of crazy stuff. Like I said, I get it. It's a satire. The characters are supposed to be caricatures. They're supposed to be parodies, but it's not Um, I don't know what I want to say. It's not as good as it could be. There's just stuff in there that's just a little bit too cringeworthy. You kind of think, all right, do you really think this is what rich people do? You know what I mean? Meaning you, the writer, the artist and writer. Like I said, it's just some of it's a little bit beyond the pale. At the same time, I get that he's trying to do satire and he's trying to make it over the top on purpose, but maybe it's just a little so over the top that it kind of loses a little bit of what it's going for. I do like the art. The art really makes me think of like Tim Sales. And it makes me think of Tim Sales back when Tim Sales was doing Deathblow uh, for Wildstorm back in the day. And that Tim Sales was kind of channeling a little bit of Frank Miller when Miller was doing like Dark Knight's Returns. And not so much that I thought it was a copy of his style, but the influence was just obviously there. So that's what this makes me think of. Tim Sales is doing Frank Miller, and this guy's doing Tim Sales, you know. So, but I think it's, for the most part, it's solid art though. So I do like it. As far as the, like I said, the politics, that's another thing. This is an actual actual left wing extremist comic, as opposed to a lot of stuff that gets, you know, labeled as such that it's going on in Marvel and DC these days. But yeah. Anyway, interesting, not great. Like the art. The writing could be a little bit smarter. Okay, Injection number 15 by Warren Ellis, and the art is Declan Shalvey. This is basically the end of, I guess this is the end of this arc. The comic looks like it's going to be going on hiatus until sometime next year. I don't want to give too much away, but I really enjoyed it. It's going out with kind of a bang, and the little cliffhanger, you know, works for me. I can't remember if I've said this on tape before, but I do think it's interesting. I do appreciate the fact that it's kind of a diverse cast, but the cast is, most of the people are from the UK, and obviously Warren Ellis is from the UK. And for all the talk about diversity in comics and this, that, and the other thing, you're getting a different take on it than you would if this was maybe a Avengers comic or something like that, you know, or a superhero comic from the US or whatever. So, but anyway, solid read, cool occult stuff, cool pseudo science fiction-y stuff, smart ass, sarcastic heroes, and yeah, Injection. Speaking of Archie Comics, Die Kitty Die, Hollywood or Bust number 3. Written and drawn by Dan Parent and Fernando Ruiz. Basically, the premise of the comic book is Kitty is basically this sort of Sabrina the Teenage Witch type character who has her own comic book, but the comic book company has revamped their whole line, and they are trying to kill Kitty. In the meantime, they're trying to get like Hollywood deals and movie deals and stuff like that. And this is kind of her sort of misadventures and wacky goings on dealing with that. It's basically a parody of like Archie Comics, Harvey Comics, and specifically, and then things that are going on in the comic book community, or not the comic book community, but the comic book industry right now. So it starts, this particular issue has kind of a funny thing here. Join us for the fun-filled, kitty-tastic Bang Shangapalooza lineup. And basically, it's, if you read old comics from the 60s and 70s, they would have these ads that were basically ads for Saturday morning cartoon lineups on whatever network, and these are basically sort of kind of parodies of that. And here you have like the little fake shows here: Catty and the Alley Cats, Law and Order Babies, The Scrappy Poo, Leroy and the Bobbit, Godzilla Power Hour, HR Stuffin' Poof. In this particular issue, Kitty's main rival, Caddy, has captured her and one of her friends, who's this kind of circus freak with two heads, and she's making them live out old TV shows. So here's, the 60s Star Trek, Jerry Springer, I Love Lucy, Three's Company, and a few other things. One thing I wanted to point out, which I thought was really interesting, is, I guess, spoilers. We get to this point here where the head of the comic book company is walking around the set where they're shooting the Kitty movie, and of course Kitty is not involved in this or anything like that. And the head of the old comic book company is drawn as this scruffy old guy with ratty hair. His hair is so unkempt, there's a bird living in it. And then look at this. Who's this bum? Skip, it's me. I drew Kitty comics for 20 years. Oh yeah, what's his name? I read about the Kitty movie, so I thought I might be able to help. After all, I wrote and drew Kitty for 20 years. And he says, sorry pal, our lawyers tell you if we let you help, it can be seen as a mission that you actually did something, and we might have to pay you. And then they have the security beat the guy up, throw him out. And the security guard is wearing a shirt that says, screw you. Thing is, yeah, in real life, Dan Parent has written and drawn Archie comics for something like 20 years, since the late 80s, early 90s, something like that. And I think Dan Parent's a little bit bitter, but I don't blame him. I mean, you look at what happened to Dan DeCarlo. Dan DeCarlo was one of the main Archie creators since the mid 60s. I mean, when people think of Archie comics, they basically think of Dan DeCarlo's art style. And when they did the Josie and the Pussycats movie, I don't know how many people know, but Josie and the Pussycats is loosely based on Dan DeCarlo's real life wife. He came up with a concept called Hey Josie or something like that, and he was going to take it to the newspaper syndicates like King Features or whatever, but he thought he'd bring it to Archie first. Archie turned into a comic book, and then the cartoon people turned it into Josie and the Pussycats or whatever. So when Josie and the Pussycats became a live action movie, Dan DeCarlo was like, okay, I created this character. This character is based loosely on my wife. I get something for this, right? And Archie Comics basically told him, no, you don't get anything, screw you, and because you brought it up, fuck you, you're fired. So yeah, they fucked over Dan DeCarlo. I'm not surprised that they fucked over Dan Parent. But okay, next comic. Destroyer number 6, written by Victor Laval and illustrated by Dietrich Smith. This is the end of this particular story. It ends on a note where they leave it open that there might possibly be a sequel. I thought it was okay. It's basically a kind of modern twist on the whole Frankenstein myth. It's okay. I thought the writing was pretty decent. Basically, you have this female scientist who has used the notes of Victor von Frankenstein to save her dead son and give him superpowers. There's some other shenanigans going on with her ex-husband or the father of the child. And he's working with other government agents that know the scientist and, trying to want to rein her in. And for the most part, the reader is pretty sympathetic to the scientist. This issue, we have kind of an interesting twist. Oh, and then of course there's the whole thing where the original Frankenstein monster is stomping around and doing all kinds of crazy things and whatnot. So, I mean, on the whole, not a bad comic book. Would I recommend it? Maybe. I mean, it just depends on your taste. I mean, if you're in for something a little bit different than a lot of stereotypical, Marvel and DC superheroes, and you like sort of semi-horror, science fiction-y things, you might enjoy it. So, there we go. Okay, Divided States of Hysteria, written and drawn by Howard Chaykin. This is the end of the first arc. They're going to be doing a volume 2 whenever they get around to it, I guess. The premise was basically there's all sorts of chaos and anarchy and terrorist attacks happening on U.S. soil, and an FBI agent assembles this team of basically serial killers and spree killers, just really repugnant human beings, to take down the terrorists. And the whole thing is, it's violent, it's profane, it's fast moving, just one crazy thing happening after the other. It was kind of a letdown. It's not bad, it's not terrible, but I wanted a little bit more substance. After I finished reading this issue, it just seemed like the story didn't have that much of a point to it, other than here's Howard Chaykin being crazy and profane again. So it was okay, but yeah, I think that's what I want to say. I wish it had a little bit more substance, especially from a guy like Howard Chaykin, who actually is a smart person, and does have things on his mind and can say things as far as social issues and politics and whatnot. Like I said, this could have been better. It just could have been better. So, Gasolina #1 and #2, written and drawn by Sean Mankiewicz and Nico Walter and Matt Lopez. I really enjoyed this comic so far. Basically, it has something to do with this guy who's kind of a doctor or ex-doctor or something like that, and his wife, who they really haven't told too much about her backstory. I guess they're in Mexico or right on the border of Mexico. A lot of it has to do with them trying to walk that fine line of dealing with people who are connected to like the drug cartels and things like that. There are these weird murders that are going on. Nobody knows exactly what's happening. Some are just, crime killings, but some seem to be the result of some sort of supernatural influence. So I really liked it. It's really tightly written. The script has lots of realistic dialogue. The pacing is good. The art is really good looking. I don't want to say nice. That's, it's not nice. But just quality work. I'm really glad that I took a chance on this particular comic. Alright, Green Arrow #33 and #34, These are the Mike Grell covers. These are written by Benjamin Percy, and the art in 33 is by Jamal Campbell, and the art in 34 is by Stephen Byrne. I will admit I like the art in 33 a lot better. Although their styles aren't super different, I just think that Jamal's art, on one hand, is both a little bit more stylistic, but at the same time being better craft-wise as far as, anatomy and composition and stuff like that. And it's kind of, it's slick. It's slick and flamboyant, but you can still make out what's what. I think the Stevens art is just, like I said, it's similar, but it's just stiffer. It just doesn't have the same sort of dynamic flair that Jamal Campbell's art has. But it works, and it wasn't jarring to see the change in the art style. Story-wise, this is Oliver Queen returning to Star City. He's going to trying to deal with the charges against him. The police think some people have died and that it's his fault. We're also picking up on what happened to Diggle and Merlin, and this is also the return of Oliver Queen's mom, who on one hand seems really sweet and whatnot, but on the other hand has her own agenda going on. I think I've mentioned before that I've talked before about the writing in this comic and how it's kind of before it's interesting and energetic, but it's also kind of sloppy and kind of jumps around a bit. It's tightened up a little bit, so I do appreciate that. So far, like I said, I'm still having fun with it, so I'm still aboard. Okay, so Falcon number 1 and number 2, written by Joshua Barnes. The interior art is by... Oh, no, I said that wrong. The writer is Rodney Barnes. The artist is Joshua Barnes. And the cover art is by Jesus Sayas. I like these covers. I'm kind of mad on the interior art. And I'll get that to it. I'll get to that in a moment. Basically, the premise here is Sam Wilson has gone back to being the Falcon, because of course he was going to come back to the Falcon. And he's moved to Chicago. I'm not sure if he's moved or he's just coming to Chicago. But basically, he's come to Chicago. His sidekick is a character who's the new Patriot character. And basically, they're going to do something about the whole gang problem and gang violence. And the Falcon tries to have like a summit to have all the different members kind of come together and have kind of a truce or a ceasefire or whatever. And unbeknownst to him so far, let's see, how do I want to put this? Well, we'll just describe what's going on. Of course, he's trying to like talk to people and say, this isn't the way to do it. This isn't the way to be. He's trying to work with the mayor. He's trying to work with the cops. Like I said, he's trying to work with the gangs. And he realizes that it's just not that easy. You can't just come in and say, hey, stop all the fighting or whatever. He's trying to, but it's a difficult situation. Unbeknownst to him, Blackheart, who is the son of Mephisto, who is, a demon character in the Marvel Universe, is kind of manipulating things a little bit. He's got his own interest of what's going on. So he's kind of, he meaning Blackheart, kind of has something going on with one of the gang members and la di da di da di da. So that's what's going on. Like I said, Sam tries to kind of broker peace. It doesn't happen. The violence escalates and whatnot. And yeah, I think it's a pretty interesting story. I have issues though with the art. It's just really sketchy, really scratchy looking. And then the coloring in a lot of places, well, it's not so bad here, but the coloring in some places, oh, here's a good example, is very dark and murky. And it's like you can't necessarily, sometimes it's hard to make out what's going on, and that, in my opinion, is bad art. I'm somebody who can appreciate lots of different art styles and visuals and things like that, but if I can't tell what's going on, I consider that bad art. So things I did like I said, I did like the whole thing of Falcon trying to deal with everyday problems. Yeah, everyday problems. I guess that's what I want to say. It's kind of a continuation of what was going on when Nick Spencer's Sam Wilson Captain America run, where he was dealing like social issues and politics and stuff like that. So I thought that was fine. I don't have a problem with that at all. I actually like stories like that. I like the relationship he has with his sidekick, who's the new Patriot. I guess the whole thing with this character, the Patriot, is in the Young Avengers, there was a character named the Patriot, and that Patriot was the grandson. That was Eli Bradley, and he was the grandson of Isaiah Bradley, who was the character from when Marvel did, this might have been like 10 years ago, a comic called Captain America: The Truth. And the whole point to that comic was before they did experiments on Steve Rogers to make him Captain America, they experimented on black men before, and it was kind of a sort of reference to the whole Tuskegee experiments and things like that, and la di da, so on and so forth. Anyway, getting to the point, I guess there's been a conflict between Marvel and the creators of that comic, and so Marvel's not using Isaiah Bradley and they're not using Eli Bradley right now until whenever those issues get worked out or whatever. All those stories are still canon and whatnot, but they're not going to use Eli Bradley, like I said, who was the Patriot in the Young Avengers comics. But since Marvel does still have the trademark to the name Patriot, they've come up with a new Patriot character. So anyway, that's where we are, where that is. Michael Cray, number 1 and number 2, written by Brian Hill, and the art is Stephen Harris. It's basically a spin-off of the main Wildstorm comic. Michael Cray is this, I guess, former Special Forces agent, and he's got some thing happening to him where he seems to have paranormal abilities. He can't quite control it, so he doesn't really use it so much. But he's been hired by the government to kind of, I guess, do kind of wet work, hitman type stuff for them. And in these two issues, the first person he has to take on is an evil version of Oliver Queen. The Wildstorm comics are set in a different universe than the regular DC superhero universe. So, not only are the old Wildstorm characters, we get characters from the Authority and Wildcats and whatnot, and actually Michael Cray used to be Deathblow, I believe. But not only are these characters different, I guess we're going to see different takes on, like I said, main DCU heroes and things. In this one, like I said, the bad guy actually turns out to be Oliver Queen, and he's basically bought an island for himself where he goes around hunting people. So yeah, I thought it was fun-ish. It was entertaining. The art's functional. The story's functional. I guess that's probably going to be the direction of this comic. Maybe we're just going to see weird twisted takes of familiar characters. Maybe I'm kind of hoping it might kind of go into that vein of like Planetary. We saw, like I said, these weird takes on like old pulp heroes. Maybe they're going to be doing that with this comic. So we'll see. Fighting American #1 and #2, written by Gordon Rennie, and the art is Duke Mighton. I know this cover is Terry and Rachel Dotson, and this cover is Mark Beckingham. Basically, the premise is this is an old Jack Kirby and Joe Simon character from the 50s, and obviously he's a patriotic hero. And at that time, they had him fighting the communists, and the tone of the comic was a little bit more tongue-in-cheek, a little bit more satirical. So now I think they kind of carry on that tone or approach in a more modern way. Basically, the characters Fighting America and his sidekick Speed Boy, they've come from the 50s. They were chasing some bad guys, and they went through a time loop, so now they're in the 21st century, and they're just basically going about things the way they have been in the past. And we see them kind of dealing with weird cultural differences and whatnot, differences in crime fighting and what's going and what have you. And then of course their villains are still up to their old tricks. So it's a kind of interesting, fun take. It's light, it's breezy. Like I said, it's kind of they keep with the whole sort of tongue-in-cheek attitude, and we get a new character. Well, I don't know if this is a new character. I'm assuming this is a new character. They're dealing with their FBI agent. They think it's funny that she's a girl, but they roll with it. The art is interesting. I don't know quite how to describe it. I wouldn't necessarily call it indie art or underground art, or I don't know what I would describe it as. It works for what it is. I probably wouldn't like this type of art on something like the Fantastic Four, where they're trying to play a superheroic straight. But like I said, it does work for this kind of more satirical approach, and it's fun. Like I said, the comic is good. I don't think it's bad in any way. It's not necessarily groundbreaking, but it's not bad. So I guess I'm on for the next couple of issues, so I'll probably give the whole arc at least a try. So, all right. Hey everybody, so I'm going to pretty much cut it off here. I have more reviews coming up, so please watch the next video. Any comments and whatnot are welcome. And hey, here's some bloopers for you. Cheers. This is like a cheap energy drink. These cost like $1. This is Rip It Energy Tribute Energy Cherry Lime. Okay. Okay. What's that Joe Walsh record or Joe Walsh album or song? The smoker you get, the player you the smoker you get, the player you get, something like that. Okay.